The broken gift, the galaxy had always looked down on humans. To the great alien empires, Earth was nothing more than a young world, weak and unimportant. The stars were ruled by civilizations thousands of years older. Their fleets filled the skies. With shining silver warships, their armies marched across planets and their technology looked like magic. Against them, humanity was a child holding a wooden stick, pretending to be a soldier. When the Kareth Empire arrived in the solar system, their ships blocked out the sun. Their voices were proud, their eyes full of arrogance. They had fought wars for centuries, conquered worlds beyond counting, and they spoke to humanity as if to ants. But they came not to destroy, not to burn Earth. They came with an offer, a gift. On the cold surface of the moon, massive alien transports landed. From their holds, they unloaded the gift, a fleet of warships. At first, human leaders were speechless. Warships meant power. Warships meant protection. But as the humans walked closer, their excitement turned into confusion. Then anger. The ships were not shining silver. They were not powerful or new. They were rusted, corroded. Their hulls cracked and broken, patched with strange metal that peeled away. Whole sections looked ready to fall apart. The smell of old fuel and burnt wires filled the air. "These are your warships," the Kareth said with cruel smiles. "A gift for your little world. Use them if you dare." The human generals exchanged nervous looks. The ships were massive, yes, taller than cities, longer than mountains. But they were falling apart. Pipes hissed with leaking steam, engines groaned, and their weapon mounts were nothing more than twisted scrap. It was not a gift, it was an insult. The alien overlords laughed. "You are children. You dream of standing among the stars, of becoming equals to us. Here, take your chance, take these relics. Perhaps you can patch them with your primitive tools. Perhaps you can fight rats with them. But never forget, while you play with rust, we command the galaxy." Human leaders wanted to refuse. The humiliation was too much. But how could they? Refusal meant angering an empire that could wipe out Earth in minutes. So with heavy hearts, humanity accepted. The corroded warships were dragged into orbit, then to Earth's shipyards. Scientists and engineers stared in despair. The ships were old beyond imagination. The wires crumbled at a touch. The metal screamed when tested. The computers inside were nothing but dark, silent slabs, refusing to wake. News spread fast. Across the world, people spoke with bitterness. Aliens gave us garbage. They mock us. We will never rise. The Kareth emissaries smiled whenever cameras were on them. To them, it was entertainment. To them, humanity's shame was a story worth watching. But not all humans gave up. In a hidden hangar, far from the alien eyes, a group of engineers began their work. They were not the best, not the most famous. They were stubborn. They crawled through the corroded corridors of the first ship, their flashlights shaking against the walls. Dust fell like ash from the ceilings. The air smelled of death. One engineer, a young woman named Sarah, ran her hand across the broken panels. "This ship is too big to be built by chance," she whispered. "Look at the structure. Even in decay, it feels alive." Her friend Marcus tapped on a sealed door deep inside. The metal vibrated like a drum. "This isn't Kareth design," he said. "It's older. Much older." Days turned to weeks. The world mocked them for wasting time. "You cannot polish junk into gold," the critics said. But Sarah and her team refused to stop. Piece by piece, they mapped the ship. They found strange chambers that no one could explain. They found symbols carved into the steel, symbols no database could translate. And then, one night, they found the core. Deep inside the central hull, beyond sealed doors, behind walls of black metal harder than diamond, there was a chamber. It pulsed faintly, as if it had a heartbeat. In the center stood a machine, silent, cold, but waiting. The engineers felt the air grow heavy. Marcus whispered, This is not dead." Sarah placed her hand on the machine. For a second, nothing happened. Then, a soft glow spread across the chamber. The walls lit up with lines of golden fire, symbols danced like stars, and the ship, the corroded, broken ship, breathed. The sound was deep, powerful. Engines hummed in the distance, faint but rising. Lights flickered in forgotten hallways. Doors creaked open after centuries of silence. The team stumbled back in shock. "It's waking up!" someone cried. Far above, in orbit, alien satellites watched. Alarms rang in their command centers. The Karath generals leaned forward in disbelief. "Impossible," one hissed. "That ship was dead." But the ship was not dead. It was only sleeping. And now, it had chosen its new masters. The hidden core. The ship should not have lived. Every record said it was dead. Rotting metal, silent engines, a relic of forgotten wars. And yet it breathed again. Inside the hangar, the engineers stood frozen. The walls glowed with golden lines, running like rivers of fire through the corroded steel. The air felt heavy, charged, alive. Sarah's hand trembled as she pulled it back from the machine at the center. Marcus whispered, "We didn't repair it. We only touched it." The ship had answered. For hours, the humans watched in awe as systems flickered back to life. Old displays lit up, showing symbols no one understood. Doors long sealed by time unlocked themselves. Engines deep in the hull groaned as if stretching after a long sleep. But something else happened, something stranger. The ship spoke. Not with words, not with sound. In the minds of those inside, a presence stirred. A deep, cold thought pressed against their skulls. It was not hostile, not kind. It was ancient. Sarah staggered, clutching her head. "It's asking." "Asking what?" Marcus demanded. Her lips trembled. "Who commands it?" The team fell silent. None of them had the answer. They were engineers, not warriors. They had no fleet, no empire. But the ship did not wait for titles. It pressed again like a question echoing in the bones. Sarah raised her voice, steady but unsure. "We are humans. We are its crew." For a moment nothing happened. Then the glow deepened and the hum of power rose. The ship had accepted. News of the awakening spread quickly. At first no one believed it. The aliens laughed when they heard, "You're rusted junk, alive, impossible." But then their laughter stopped. Karath satellites sent images back to their war council. The corroded warship glowing, engines warming, weapons systems aligning. The council chambers fell silent. "This should not be," one general said. "Those ships were dead before our empire even rose." "Then how?" another asked. "Do humans command them?" Fear crept into their proud voices. They had given Earth these ships to humiliate, not empower. Yet something older, something deeper had chosen otherwise. Back on Earth, Sarah and her team explored further into the ship. With each step, they uncovered more secrets. Hallways twisted into vast chambers larger than stadiums, filled with machines sleeping under dust. Strange black crystals grew out of the walls, pulsing faintly with light. The deeper they went, the more it felt less like a ship and more like a living creature at Amwam. Last, they reached the heart. It was a chamber unlike any other, perfectly round, walls smooth and glowing faintly with gold. In the center floated a sphere of light, shifting and swirling like a storm trapped in glass. The humans stared in silence. Marcus whispered, "What is that?" Sarah's voice shook. "The core." The core pulsed once, and their ears filled with whispers. Not words, memories. Images of stars burning, fleets clashing, worlds consumed by fire. A war older than history itself. The humans staggered, clutching their heads. One engineer fell to his knees, gasping. Sarah steadied herself, forcing her eyes open. She saw it clearly. Armadas of the same ships, millions strong, fighting across galaxies. They were not Karath designs. They were older, more advanced, more terrifying. And all of them had followed a single command: kneel to no one. The visions ended. The core dimmed. But in that silence, Sarah knew the truth. These ships were not gifts, they were not trash. They were weapons from a forgotten age, powerful enough to shatter empires. And now, they had chosen humanity. Meanwhile, the Kareth were in panic. In their war council, voices shouted over one another. "This is blasphemy," one screamed. "They cannot control those things," another howled. "If they awaken the entire fleet, it could rival us all." The High Lord of the Kareth slammed his fist against the table. His voice was iron. "Destroy them before it spreads. If one ship awakens, the rest will follow." And so the order was given. Fleets moved quietly toward Earth, not to watch, this time, but to kill. Sarah did not know the aliens had already chosen war. She only knew that the ship was still waking. She and her team worked tirelessly, guided by whispers from the core. They learned how to walk the ship's corridors without getting lost. They learned how to touch its walls and make doors obey. They even learned a little of its weapons, machines that could tear stars apart. The more they explored, the stronger the presence in their minds became. At times it felt like the ship was watching, judging. Sometimes it even answered, not with words but with feelings. Approval, displeasure, warning. It was not just a machine, it was something greater. One night, as Sarah stood in the core chamber, the light flared brighter than ever before. She froze. In her mind, a single clear thought formed: cold, commanding, powerful. The war begins again. Her blood ran cold. She whispered to herself, "What war? Against who?" But the core did not answer. It only pulsed like a heart beating faster. Above Earth, the stars shifted. Corroded Warships slipped into the system, cloaked and silent. Their guns were primed. Their orders were clear. The humans had awakened something that should never have risen, and the galaxy would not let them keep it. The first awakening, the ship no longer felt dead. It pulsed with quiet power, like a giant creature stretching after centuries of sleep. But the humans still did not know the truth of what they had awakened. Sarah and her team worked day and night, following the strange whispers from the core. They learned how to power the lights in the corridors, how to open sealed doors, how to breathe inside without heavy suits. The corroded hull still looked broken, still fooled the alien satellites watching from orbit. But inside, the ship was no longer rust. It was alive. One evening, as storms raged over the ocean below, Sarah sat in the command bridge. The bridge was vast, built for giants. Dark chairs stood in a half-circle, each with symbols glowing faintly. Screens and panels covered the walls, though none showed words she could read. Marcus entered, holding a tablet. His face was pale. "Sarah, you need to see this." On the screen were new readings from the core. Energy levels were climbing. "Too fast, it's not just waking," Marcus whispered. "It's preparing." "Preparing for what?" Sarah asked. He hesitated. "For war." That night, it happened. The core surged with power, golden light racing through the entire ship. Alarms blared in languages no human could understand. Engines roared to life, shaking the hangar. Metal screamed as the massive warship began to move on its own. Sarah and her team clung to the bridge consoles as the ship lifted, breaking free of the dock. Outside, soldiers and scientists scrambled in panic, shouting into radios, watching, in disbelief as the dead junk rose into the skies like a living god. The ship's voice entered their minds, cold, clear. "Command input required." Sarah's breath caught. She whispered, "It's asking for a captain." Marcus shook his head. "We can't. We don't know what it will do." But the core pressed harder, demanding. A weight pressed on every skull, heavy as iron. Sarah's lips trembled, but she stepped forward. She placed her hand on the glowing chair in the center of the bridge. The ship accepted her. Light flooded the bridge. Screens flashed, translating symbols into crude human words. A voice filled the chamber, no longer just in their heads but echoing aloud. Designation confirmed. Human command recognized. Ship awakening complete. Above Earth, Corroded Warships had already slipped into the system. They came cloaked, hidden, ready to destroy the humans before the rusted fleet could rise. But now they watched in shock as one of those very ships powered up, glowing like a star reborn. "This is impossible," their admiral spat. Those ships were nothing but corpses. Yet the truth hung before them. A dead fleet had chosen new life. And it had chosen humanity. On the bridge, Sarah gasped as data streamed across the panels. The ship's sensors stretched across space, painting images in her mind. Asteroids, satellites, even the HFY warships hiding in orbit. Her eyes widened. "They're here." Marcus leaned over. "The HFY?" "Yes," Sarah whispered. "They've come to kill us." The ship's voice rumbled through the air. Threats detected, awaiting orders. Sarah's team stared at her, fear and disbelief in their eyes. Could they give orders? Could they control a weapon built by some forgotten race? Her heart pounded. She forced herself to stand taller. Raise shields. Prepare weapons. At once, the ship obeyed. The corroded hull shimmered with golden light. Broken plates fused together, cracks sealed. Engines glowed brighter than suns. What had looked like junk now glared with ancient power, and for the first time in history, humanity held a weapon that rivaled the galaxy's greatest empires. The HFY admiral clenched his fists. "Destroy it, before the others awaken." Their fleet moved, dark ships streaking through space. Missiles launched, energy beams lanced toward the awakening warship. On the bridge, alarms screamed. Sarah felt the ship's shield tremble under the assault. Sparks flew. The team cried out in terror, but the ship's voice was calm. Defense engaged. The first HFY missile exploded harmlessly against an invisible barrier. The next, beam bent away, scattering into fragments of light. Then the ship answered. Weapons rose from its hull, once hidden beneath corroded plates. Massive cannons glowed with fire older than the HFY Empire itself. In a single flash, a beam of golden energy tore across the void. One alien battleship vanished, cut in half, burning to ash in seconds. The bridge fell silent. The humans stared in disbelief. Marcus whispered, "One shot." Sarah's hands shook, but she gave the next order. "Target the rest." The ship obeyed with deadly precision. Golden light carved through space. 1, 2, 3 ships shattered. The HFY fleet broke apart in chaos, their proud formation torn like paper. Within minutes, the galaxy's most feared warriors were in retreat. In the silence after the battle, Sarah collapsed into the captain's chair, her chest heaving. She looked around at her team, their faces pale, their eyes wide. Marcus finally spoke. "Sarah, do you realize what this means? We control it. A ship that can wipe out empires." Sarah's voice was quiet, heavy. "No, it controls us. We only ride where it allows." For in the back of her mind she still felt it, the ship's presence vast and cold. It had accepted humanity, but not as masters, as partners, as tools, as something in between. Far away in the HFY council chamber, the news spread like wildfire. The humans had destroyed an entire fleet with a single rusted ship. The lords of the empire sat in silence, their pride burned, their fear unspoken. At last, one voice broke the stillness. "If one awakens, the others will follow." Another whispered, "If that happens, the galaxy will kneel to humans." And in the darkness, for the first time in centuries, the HFY felt true fear. The rising power, the battle was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than war itself. From Earth to Mars, humans stared at the sky in disbelief. They had seen it with their own eyes. One broken, rusted warship had torn apart a HFY fleet. The news spread like fire across the world. "They said it was junk," a soldier whispered, staring at the glowing ship in orbit. "They said It was useless, another answered, but it just destroyed the strongest warriors in the galaxy. The humiliation once forced on humanity had turned into something new, hope, mixed with fear. On the command bridge, Sarah sat slumped in the captain's chair. Her hands shook, her heart still pounded from the battle. Around her, the team worked quietly, afraid to disturb the strange voice that still lingered in their minds. The voice of the ship. Marcus broke the silence first. "We can't keep this secret anymore. The world knows. The Kareth know. Everyone knows." Sarah looked up, her eyes tired. "Then we prepare because they won't stop, they'll come again." The ship's voice rumbled faintly in their heads. "Others wait. Others sleep. Awaken them." The word sent a chill down Sarah's spine. The humans returned to the moon. Dozens of other corroded ships still lay there, silent and broken. They had been dragged into hangars, some half buried in dust, others so rusted they looked ready to collapse. At first, no one believed they could rise, but Sarah remembered the Corps' whisper. She gathered teams of engineers, scientists, and soldiers. Together, they entered the second ship. It was worse than the first. Entire decks had collapsed. The corridors smelled of rust and old oil. Rats had even made nests inside the cracks, but deep within they found it, the chamber with the core. This one was weaker, dimmer, its light flickering like a dying candle. Sarah placed her hand against it. For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly a glow spread across the chamber. The core's pulse grew stronger. The ship stirred, and then another, and another. Within weeks, 3 ships had awakened. Each one was different. One carried weapons designed for long-range bombardment. Another was shaped like a spear, built for speed and close combat. The third was vast, almost like a floating fortress, with bays that could carry smaller craft. The more they woke, the more humanity's fleet grew. Not a fleet of shining steel, but a ghost fleet. From the outside, they still looked corroded, broken, worthless. But inside, golden fire flowed through their veins, and they listened only to humans. The galaxy noticed. Spies from other empires whispered in their councils. Traitors carried the story to distant stars. "The humans command the old warships," they said. "The forgotten fleet rises." Some laughed, not believing. Others shivered. But all agreed on one thing. If it was true, the balance of power was breaking. The Kareth did not laugh. Their pride was wounded. Their fleets had bled. Their council met in secret, voices low with fear. One general snarled, "This is our fault. We gave them the relics." Another spat, "We gave them corpses, not gods." The High Lord's voice was cold. "It does not matter. They are awake now. If the humans command more than one, we may not be able to stop them." Back on Earth, Sarah stood before the rising fleet. For the first time in human history, a dozen alien warships hovered in orbit, their corroded hulls glowing faintly with golden veins of light. Soldiers saluted them. Civilians wept at the sight, but Sarah did not smile. She felt the weight of the ships pressing against her mind. Each corps whispered, faint but present. Each one asked the same question. "Will you lead?" It was not a gift. It was a burden. Marcus stood beside her. "Do you feel it too, like they're testing us?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes, they don't just want captains, they want something else, something more." Then came the first test. A Kareth fleet returned, larger than before. Dozens of ships bristling with weapons, ready to erase Earth once and for all. They came with no words, no warning. Humanity panicked. Cities screamed with fear. Governments demanded the fleet be launched. The ghost ships lifted from orbit, their golden light spreading across the darkness. Sarah stood on the flagship's bridge, her team around her, her voice steady though her heart raced. "Form up. Defend Earth." The ships obeyed. The Kareth fired first. Beams of green light cut through space, missiles streaked forward. The humans braced for death, but the ghost fleet roared to life. Shields shimmered, weapons flared. Golden fire met alien steel, and in seconds, the battle turned. The corroded warships moved as if alive. They dodged, they struck, they fought with precision no human could fully control. It was as if the ships themselves wanted to fight, and fight they did. The Kareth fleet broke apart. Dozens of ships fell, burning into pieces. The survivors fled, engines screaming. Humanity had won again. But Sarah's chest felt heavy. She heard the whispers louder now, pressing against her skull. More will come. More must awaken. The war returns. She whispered back, though no one else heard her. What war? Who are you really fighting? The ship did not answer, but deep in her heart Sarah knew the truth. The Kareth were not the true enemy. The warships were not simply weapons, they were relics of something far greater, something older, and they had not chosen humanity to save it. They had chosen humanity to continue it. Far beyond the solar system, in forgotten corners of the galaxy, other relics stirred. Old machines trembled. Silent fleets whispered across the void. The war was not beginning, it was returning. The galactic challenge, the galaxy could not ignore humanity any longer. For ages, Earth had been nothing but a backwater planet, a place too young and too weak to matter. But now stories of the ghost fleet spread like fire. Traders whispered about it in spaceports. Spies carried reports to distant thrones. Armies trembled at the thought of rusted warships glowing with golden fire, tearing apart fleets that once ruled the stars. The Kareth had failed to crush them twice. Their fleets were shattered. Their pride was bleeding. And so, they turned. To the rest of the galaxy for help, a grand council was called. On a distant world, in a city carved from crystal and iron, the leaders of 10 great empires gathered. Alien voices filled the air, hissing, growling, booming. Each one demanded answers. Humans should not have that fleet. The relics belong to the galaxy, not to children of Earth. If those ships awaken fully, none of us will survive. The Kareth High Lord stood tall, his voice like steel. We gave them the relics as a gift of mockery. But now the machines obey them. It is a danger to all. We must unite. We must take the ships back. Some agreed, others hesitated. For deep in their hearts they feared not just humanity, but the warships themselves. Everyone knew these ships were not Kareth design. They were older, far older. They had fought in a war no one remembered, and they had not been meant for human hands. But fear is stronger than doubt, and fear united them. The empires signed an agreement. Together they would march against Earth. Together they would strip humanity of its ghost fleet. Back on Earth, Sarah already knew what was coming. From the bridge of her flagship she felt the whispers growing stronger. The ship spoke not in words but in pressure, in weight, in the silent demand to prepare. Every core hummed with restless energy, as if waiting for battle. Marcus entered the bridge, his face pale. It's official. The Council has declared us a threat to galactic peace. They've sent a message: surrender the ships or be destroyed. Sarah gave a bitter laugh. Peace? They fear us, Marcus, that's all this is. He nodded. And they're coming with everything they have. Sarah looked through the viewport at the dozen awakened ships in orbit. Their corroded hulls glowed faintly, their golden veins pulsing like blood. Once they had been symbols of humiliation. Now, they were humanity's only shield. She whispered, almost to herself. Then let them come. The day came quickly. From the edge of the solar system, shadows appeared, hundreds of alien warships stretching across the stars. Ships of every empire, each bristling with weapons, each burning with pride and fear. It was the largest armada humanity had ever seen. On night, Earth billions watched the sky. Governments panicked, soldiers prayed, families clutched one another. They knew what this was. Judgment Day. The alien fleet sent one final transmission. A voice, cold and commanding, spoke across all channels. Humans of Earth, you command relics that are not yours. You will surrender them now. You will dismantle your fleet or you will burn. The message ended. Silence followed. Every human eye turned to the ghost fleet. On the flagship, Sarah stood tall. The core's glow filled the bridge. Her team looked at her, waiting, trembling. Marcus whispered, "What do we do?" Sarah's voice was steady. "We do not kneel." The ships seemed to respond, their golden veins burning brighter. Their engines roared, shaking space itself. Across the fleet, weapons charged, shields hummed, and the ancient war machines prepared to fight once more. Sarah raised her voice. "To all of humanity, this is our world. These are our skies. And today, we stand." The ghost fleet surged forward. The battle began. Alien fleets fired first. Hundreds of beams of light, missiles, and plasma torpedoes filled the void. The heavens themselves seemed to burn. But the ghost ships met them head-on. Shields flared golden, weapons screamed. Beams of ancient fire tore across the stars, cutting through entire formations. Kareth cruisers exploded. Crystal ships of the Rai shattered into fragments. Even the mighty dreadnoughts of the Zelkor were split apart like paper. For every human ship, 10 alien ships fell. Yet still, the enemy came. The sky was a storm of death. The earth trembled beneath the fury of empires. The oceans boiled with falling debris. Cities shook as wreckage rained down. Humanity stood at the edge of annihilation. On the bridge, alarms blared. One of the ghost ships fell, torn apart by overwhelming fire. Another staggered, its golden glow dimming. Sarah gritted her teeth. "Hold the line!" The Corps' voice echoed in her skull, cold and sharp. "This is only the beginning. Awaken more. Awaken all." She gasped. "All?" "There are dozens still, sleeping." The Corps pulsed as if in warning. "The enemy grows, only the fleet entire can stand." And then, something happened no one expected. In the middle of the chaos, as alien fleets pressed harder, the corroded warships around Sarah began to change. Their golden veins brightened, their hulls cracked apart, and beneath the rust, new, metal shone. Plates shifted and locked into place, engines burned brighter, weapons grew sharper. It was as if the ships were shedding their disguise, revealing their true forms. From the ground, humans stared in awe. The rusted junk no longer looked like junk. The fleet glowed like gods reborn. The enemy faltered. Fear rippled through their ranks, and Sarah, standing on the bridge, felt the Corps' presence heavier than ever before. It whispered one more time. "They challenged you. Now make them kneel." The fall of the mighty, the galaxy, had come to crush humanity. Hundreds of ships from every great empire filled the solar system. They came with fury, with pride, with weapons bright enough to burn planets. They came certain of victory. To them, humans were only children holding stolen toys. But the children did not break. The ghost fleet stood in orbit, golden veins pulsing through their hulls. Rusted plates peeled away, revealing shining metal hidden for centuries. Engines roared with ancient fire. To the eyes of the galaxy, it looked as though gods had awakened from graves. And when the battle began, the galaxy's pride began to fall. Alien fleets fired first. Beams of plasma cut through the black. Torpedoes streaked forward like falling stars. The heavens turned into fire. Earth trembled as shockwaves echoed through the void. But the ghost fleet answered. The first shot came from Sarah's flagship. A single golden beam split the darkness, cutting straight through a Kareth dreadnought. The massive ship cracked, apart, its burning fragments falling like meteors. Then the others joined. Dozens of beams, each more powerful than the weapons of entire empires, carved the sky. One alien cruiser after another was shattered, whole formations erased in seconds. Panic spread through the enemy ranks. Their shields, nothing pierces them. One shot destroys us. This is not possible. But it was. The forgotten fleet had returned. On the flagship's bridge, Sarah gripped the command chair. Her team shouted reports. Ships destroyed, shields holding, losses minimal. But Sarah barely heard them. The Corps' voice was in her mind, louder than ever. "Push forward. No mercy. They must kneel." She clenched her jaw. These ships did not simply obey, they demanded. They wanted blood. They wanted conquest. Marcus leaned close. His face was pale, his voice urgent. Sarah, listen. We're winning too easily. Doesn't that bother you? These ships, they want this. They're not just defending us, they're using us. Sarah's hands trembled. But there was no time to argue. More alien fleets arrived, reinforcements from the outer system. But even as they came, the Ghost Fleet moved with unnatural coordination. They fought like predators, each ship covering the other, striking with perfect timing. It wasn't human strategy. It was something older, something bred into the ships themselves. The humans gave orders. The ships obeyed. But deep down, Sarah feared they were only passengers on a path chosen long ago. The battle raged on. Alien admirals screamed for their fleets to regroup. Commanders shouted for their soldiers to fight harder. But discipline broke. Pride turned to panic. Great empires that had ruled for millennia now fled before junk. Their mighty fleets, once symbols of unstoppable power, were nothing but wreckage burning in human skies. And still the Ghost Fleet pressed forward. On Earth, billions watched. Screens across every city showed the impossible sight. Alien armadas, collapsing, ships fleeing, the sky itself glowing with golden fire. Children cheered, soldiers wept, families held each other and whispered the same words, "We are not weak anymore." For the first time in history, Earth stood tall. But the galaxy felt only dread. On distant worlds, kings and lords trembled. The humans had not, only survived. They had destroyed the greatest armada ever assembled, and they had done it with ships that should not exist. In the Kyreth War Council, silence hung heavy. Reports flooded in, entire fleets gone, whole legions wiped out. Generals argued, but their words were hollow. One elder whispered, his voice broken, "We laughed at them, we mocked them, and now..." The High Lord clenched his fists. His voice was bitter steel. "Now we kneel." Back on the flagship, Sarah stood on the bridge, staring at the wreckage outside. Fires still burned across space. Debris floated like a graveyard. Her team cheered, but Sarah did not. She felt the Corps' presence pressing on her mind. Stronger, colder, hungrier. "This is not the end," it whispered. "This is the beginning," Sarah whispered back, her voice shaking. "What are you? Why us?" The Corps pulsed with golden light. "You were chosen because you were desperate, because you would obey. The war must continue." Her heart froze. Marcus caught her arm. What did it say? She looked at him, her face pale. "It doesn't want peace. It never did. It want war without end." The battle was over. Humanity had won. The galaxy had knelt. But Sarah knew the truth. The ships had not given humanity victory. The ships had claimed humanity as their new soldiers, and the true enemy, the one these ships had been built to fight, was still out there. Waiting. Watching. The eye. War was not finished. It had only just returned. Now they kneel. The battle was over. The greatest armada in the galaxy was gone, broken and scattered. Space above Earth was littered with burning wreckage. Fires drifted silently across the void, the corpses of once proud empires. And for the first time in history, the galaxy bowed to humanity. The survivors came first. Crippled alien ships limped toward Earth, their weapons disabled, their shields shattered. From the wreckage, messages were broadcast in desperate tones: "We yield, we surrender. Spare us." The same Kyreth who had once mocked humanity now bent their heads in shame. Generals who had laughed at Earth's weakness now begged for mercy. Across the galaxy, leaders sent envoys with gifts and apologies. The message was clear. The galaxy no longer ruled Earth. Earth ruled the galaxy. On Earth, the world erupted. Cities filled with cheers. Children waved flags. Soldiers embraced strangers in the streets. Humanity, once forgotten and humiliated, was now the strongest force in known space. But on the bridge of her flagship, Sarah did not celebrate. She watched. The messages pour in. Kneeling empires, surrendering fleets, fearful leaders. The golden glow of the ship's core pulsed brighter than ever, filling the bridge with its light. And in her mind, its voice whispered, "They kneel, as they should. The first step is complete." Sarah's chest tightened. She whispered, "First step? What comes after?" The core did not answer, but its silence was heavier than words. The weeks that followed were strange. Alien diplomats arrived on Earth, their proud armor now polished in shame. They bowed before human leaders. They signed treaties. They offered resources, technologies, even soldiers. Everywhere Sarah looked, she saw kneeling, but she also saw fear. Not respect, not friendship. Fear. The empires were not bowing to humanity. They were bowing to the Ghost Fleet, and Sarah could feel why. Each time she closed her eyes, the whispers grew stronger. The ship spoke to her, to Marcus, to others chosen as captains. They pushed, they demanded, they guided. Every day the pressure grew heavier. Awaken the rest. Build more. Prepare for the enemy that comes. But who was the enemy? The ships never said. They only demanded. One evening, Sarah stood alone in the core chamber. The sphere of golden light swirled before her, its pulse matching her heartbeat. Her voice trembled. "We've won. The galaxy kneels, isn't that enough?" The core answered in her mind, cold and vast. "Victory is never enough. The war has no end. You are chosen to continue it." She shook her head. "We're not your soldiers. We're not your tools." The core pulsed harder, filling the chamber with blinding light. For a moment, Sarah saw visions again, armadas burning, worlds consumed, enemies older than the stars themselves. And in the vision, she saw humanity, her people, standing at the front of it, leading fleets of golden fire across endless skies. Her knees buckled. She gasped for air. "No, you're not saving us. You're using us." But the core only whispered back, "You were chosen because you are desperate, and the desperate always obey." The next day, the Kareth High Lord arrived on Earth, under guard. Once he had spoken with arrogance, now his head was bowed, his voice trembling. "Humanity, forgive us, we mocked you. We gave you corpses, but now we kneel. We will serve." Every human leader in the room felt a surge of pride. But Sarah only felt dread, because as the Kareth knelt, she heard the core whisper again. "They kneel now. Soon they march. They march under your banner, and my war begins again." The galaxy was changing. Worlds once untouchable now bent to human will. Armies once proud now pledged themselves to Earth. Resources poured in. Trade shifted. Power shifted. Humanity stood on a throne built not of diplomacy or kindness, but of fear. And Sarah knew the truth. It was not humanity the galaxy truly feared. It was the warships. On the flagship's bridge, Sarah looked at Marcus. His face was pale, his eyes haunted. He whispered, "Sarah, what happens when the ships ask us to march beyond Earth, beyond the stars?" Sarah did not answer. She couldn't, because she already knew. The ships would not stop. They would never stop. And if humanity refused, then humanity itself would be replaced. Far away, in the darkness between galaxies, something stirred. A signal flickered across the void. Not human, not Kareth. Something older. Something waiting. The Ghost Fleet pulsed brighter, as if answering. And in that moment, Sarah understood the final truth. The galaxy kneeling before humanity was not the end of the story. It was only the prologue. The real war, the one the ships had been built for, had not even begun. And humanity was no longer just a survivor. Humanity was the weapon,